Last night I was scrolling when I came across this video. Now, I went down the rabbit hole and it instantly filled me with immense dread because not only did this woman disappear without a trace in the Ugandan wilderness, but her clothes were found days later, torn and wrapped tightly around tree branches not far from where she went missing. Despite a ton of evidence suggesting that she was murdered, like her underwear being hung up in a tree, authorities say this must all be just one tragic accident. This case deserves so much more attention than what it's gotten because, to many, something really sinister happened to this woman. And since this is still unsolved, let's talk about it. This is Sophia Coetzee. She was only 21 years old when she suddenly and very mysteriously disappeared in Uganda's Murchison Falls National Park in 2015. Sophia was born and raised in Amsterdam, and she was described as an extrovert who was curious, charismatic, extremely reliable, and had such a captivating personality. She was also a really talented pianist, but what she was really interested in was medicine. She studied medicine in Amsterdam, but her goal was to specialize in tropical medicine, which is a branch of healthcare that focuses on preventing, diagnosing, and treating diseases that are unique to hot, humid, and tropical regions of the world. So in 2015, when she got accepted into an 8-week internship at Lubaga Hospital in Kampala, which is the largest city in Uganda, she was over the top excited. This was like a dream come true for her, and it was kind of a much needed boost of confidence. While studying medicine prior to this, Sophia was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, so she didn't always have an easy time navigating life. But at this point in time, as she was about to fly out for this amazing opportunity, Sophia had her mental health seemingly under control. She hadn't experienced any episodes and overall was just in a good frame of mind. So during that entire 8 weeks of internship, Sophia became super close to the other medical students there and the hospital staff. She always showed up on time and was soaking up their culture and learning their way of life. She helped assist routine surgeries and delivered babies, and honestly, it was the best time of her life. She would call home to her mom and tell her how much she loved it there and how much she was learning. So when the internship came to an end, it wasn't a surprise that she didn't want to leave. Instead, she and 2 of her friends / other students there joined a small tour through the Ugandan wilderness that was supposed to last 2 weeks. And when I say small, I mean it. It was literally Sophia, her 2 girlfriends, and their tour guide, whose name was Michael. More on him later. Sophia's parents were really happy for her to explore and have fun, but they were also a little bit worried. Like I said, she had bipolar disorder, and sometimes when she didn't get enough sleep, it would send her into a spiral. She seemed to be okay during her entire 8-week internship, but once the 2-week tour started, her mental health seemed to decline. At least to her friends traveling with her, it seemed like she was experiencing symptoms of mania. Sometimes they would catch her talking to herself, and at one point she tried to get out of a moving car, but still they pushed forward hoping that she would be okay. But on the second day of the trip, her friends woke up to find Sophia missing. She eventually turned up, and she told her friends that she'd spent a good portion of the night in a lookout tower in the wildlife park that they had been staying in. When asked why she did this because it seemed a little bit scary, Sophia told her friends that she just wanted to test herself to see if she could survive one night out in the wilderness all by herself. She seemed in great spirits, but that same night, she called a friend back home in Amsterdam and told them that she wasn't getting a lot of sleep and that she was really overstimulated. She said she just wanted to be alone. On the 5th day of the trip, all 3 of the women and their tour guide traveled to Uganda's Murchison Falls National Park. They were all super excited to take a boat trip along the Nile River. At one point when they docked, Sophia walked away for a quick bathroom trip, but she didn't immediately come back. This worried her friends, so they took off looking for her. And eventually, they found her in the woods talking to a mom and her child. They asked Sophia if she was coming back with them because they were going to continue on with their trip, but Sophia said no and initially refused to come with them. She seemed way more interested in talking with this random woman, and it actually ended up causing a disagreement with her and her friends. Her friends were just trying to get back to the boat and tour guide, and they were also trying to help protect Sophia, but her behavior seemed more and more manic. This brings us to October 28th, 2015, the 6th day of the trip. Now, Sophia's friends were becoming so concerned with her behavior that they actually wanted to end their travels together early and call Sophia's mom to let her know what was happening. All day on the boat, Sophia was acting strange and fiddling with all the equipment on board, and she also spent a lot of time in the bathroom by herself. Sophia said that she had an upset stomach, but some people think that she just needed a place to be alone. I mean, she was feeling overstimulated, and with her diagnosis, maybe she just needed some time to herself. And the bathroom was really the only spot where you could truly be alone. So at around 6 p.m., the group docks, and they make their way to the student center for the Uganda Wildlife Authority in the national park. It's a deeply wooded area that's home to a few dedicated cabins for the students. This is about a third of a mile from the Nile River, which eventually flows into Lake Albert. The last time Sophia was ever seen was near the camp's bathroom about 30 minutes later, so around 6:30 p.m. She was carrying a plastic water bottle that she used to store all of her garbage, and she was looking in the direction of the river. This was right before nightfall, and as Sophia walked to the bathroom, her friend stayed behind and decided to actually call her mom. The whole point was to tell her mom that they were going to end their travels early because of Sophia's behavior, and they were really concerned. It was a sticky situation because this would more than likely upset Sophia, but they just didn't know what to do. The friends had already tried to warn their tour guide that they should just turn around and go back home instead of going deeper into the Murchison Falls National Park, but he didn't listen to them. As they were on the phone with her mom, Michael, the tour guide, approached them and said, quote, "Have you seen Sophia?" End quote. At this point, Sophia never came back from the bathroom, so they set off looking for her. And when they couldn't find her, they notified authorities. Literally within 15 minutes, Ugandan police and park rangers were on the scene looking for her, but it was like she vanished into thin air. At around 8 p.m., they had to call off the search for the night because it was too dark and dangerous, but it resumed at 9 the next morning. This is when they found their first clue. About 600 yards away from the campsite, police found Sophia's water bottle that she kept trash in floating in the Nile River. But still, no sign of Sophia herself. This is when the investigation ramped up and the search got huge. It involved helicopters, search dogs, multiple police officers and park rangers, and authorities even used drones to try and find Sophia. But it turned up nothing. Then, the next day, so now 2 days after Sophia vanished, police discovered something incredibly disturbing. Just a few yards away from where her water bottle was found, police found even more of her personal belongings scattered across the riverbank. This included her purse in good condition, her Ray-Ban sunglasses, her right shoe, which was perfectly clean, and the sole of her left shoe. The most disturbing thing found, though, was pieces of her clothing, which had been mysteriously torn and tied onto tree branches. Like, it kind of looks like this had to have been done by a human with how tightly her ripped clothes were wrapped around these branches. And it just keeps getting worse. About 16 feet up in the air, wrapped around a tree branch, was Sophia's underwear. What's super weird to me is that these belongings were found almost in the exact same place as where her water bottle was found the day prior. So how did the police miss this discovery? It was about a 15-minute walk from her campsite where she was last seen, and all of her belongings were in good condition, despite them being out in the open for several days. When asked why they didn't find these items sooner, Ugandan police said it was because it was raining really bad the night before, so they must have been underwater. But again, despite it being rainy and super muddy, her belongings were eerily clean. And that doesn't even account for her underwear, which they obviously were not underwater because they were really high up in a tree. So right off the bat, none of this made any sense, and Sophia's parents flew in to investigate themselves, along with Dutch authorities. All of this disturbing evidence was found, yet Sophia was still missing, and time was of the essence. Right away, Dutch investigators said it looked as though the scene had been manipulated and staged, and with her belongings not being found sooner, it really led them to question whether or not they'd been planted overnight. It's been reported that Ugandan police possibly lied about certain evidence that was found, and possibly even sightings of Sophia, maybe in an effort to cover up if a crime was actually committed. It really seemed like they just didn't want to investigate Sophia's disappearance, and they kind of used her bipolar diagnosis as an excuse to not pursue any leads. In my many years of researching true crime cases, I've sadly seen this happen way too many times. When someone goes missing and they have a mental health background like Sophia, people immediately almost tune out, and they use that as an excuse to not really take the case seriously. It's infuriating. So since this case wasn't really given much effort, Ugandan police came to a quick theory and possible explanation. They feel one of two things happened. Either Sophia was attacked by a wild animal, which is possible since the Nile River houses some dangerous animals like crocodiles and hippos, and the forest is home to wildlife like leopards, lions, elephants, elephants and buffaloes. That's the number one theory that they tried to push, that she was attacked and killed by a wild animal. But almost no evidence supports this. There wasn't any blood anywhere, even on her ripped clothes, and there weren't any drag marks in the mud either. Nobody heard any screams. And this theory also doesn't account for why her clothes were carefully and deliberately torn and tied really tightly around tree branches, or why her underwear was up in a tree. The second theory that Ugandan police tried to push was that, again, maybe she was attacked by a wild animal and then taken into the Nile River, where she drowned. Or that maybe she just tried to go for a swim and then, again, accidentally drowned. But that also doesn't explain the disturbing way that her clothes were found. And according to an expert and local who knows this area like the back of his hand, he says that it would have been extremely difficult for Sophia to have found the actual path to the river by herself. Not only was it pretty dark when she disappeared, but this was also her very first time in this location. It's kind of a hidden path to the river, and it's not easy to find. So with the evidence that was left behind, Sophia's parents and Dutch investigators believe something way more sinister happened. They decided to conduct a more thorough investigation themselves, and what they found is horrifying. So Dutch authorities sent all of the evidence, aka Sophia's clothes at the crime scene, to an independent forensic lab in the Netherlands. That team analyzed her clothes, and they found something alarming: a massive amount of unknown male DNA, which did not match to any of the Ugandan police working the case or to any members of the search party. Their evidence suggests at least one unknown male, but likely more, left their DNA on her clothing, and specifically her underwear. And just based on the sheer amount of DNA left behind, it has led their team to conclude that Sophia's disappearance was not self-inflicted, it was not an accident, and it wasn't the result of an animal attack. To them, it seemed clear that an animal was responsible, just the kind with 2 legs and not 4, if you know what I mean. Then, even more disturbing evidence was found backing up the theory that foul play was possibly involved. So Michael, the women's tour guide, was actually not licensed at all. He didn't have the proper training or certifications to legally give tours, and authorities warned him to stop giving tours right before Sophia disappeared. Not to mention, he supposedly took the girls to an unsafe part of the forest and against authority instructions. Sophia's friends told him that something was really wrong with her and to turn around and go back home. But he didn't. It got to the point where Michael was almost held criminally responsible for Sophia's disappearance, but the case was dropped. This all seems really sketchy to me, and I can't find if police ever tested his DNA to what was found on Sophia's underwear or not, but I really hope they did. Some locals believe that police know exactly what happened to Sophia and who was responsible, but as of today, nobody really knows what happened to Sophia. Her body has never been found, and her case remains unsolved. But over the years, there have been a few theories as to what could have happened. Theory number 1 is animal attack, which I personally don't believe just based off the evidence that we do have. Like, for starters, the unknown male DNA left behind on her clothes. That obviously does not belong to an animal. Theory number 2 is that she wandered off, maybe in a manic state and not really knowing her surroundings, and then she got lost and either drowned or succumbed to the elements. A lot of people think this is a real possibility since just a few days prior, she stayed overnight by herself in a lookout tower to see if she could survive on her own. Maybe she tried again this time and then just accidentally died and has just never been found. This still doesn't explain why her clothes were found the way they were though. Although I do acknowledge that if her mental state was deteriorating, that all sorts of things could have happened without a logical explanation. The last and most sinister theory is that foul play was involved. I mean, Sophia did disappear in the vicinity of a pathway that led to a local settlement where people lived. So it's not really unrealistic that she ran into another person out there in the woods. And just based on the male DNA left behind on her clothes, which suggests more than one man left it, I can't shake the feeling that something horrible happened to her out there. It's incredibly scary to me that she vanished off the face of the earth within 15 minutes. I don't know what happened to her, but it's just really sad to see how badly this case was botched. Ugandan police didn't even interview potential suspects or witnesses that could have seen something. But what do you guys think happened? Sophia's family went on to create this website called findsophia.org, where they continuously update the case, and they write about how her disappearance has shattered them, how the not knowing is worse than knowing. But it's now been 11 years, yet whatever really happened to Sophia out there in the wilderness remains a mystery.